Hey sports fans, Sean McNally here, and I'm going to talk to you a little today about the NFL draft that just went ahead and finished up earlier this evening. Of course, as you can see from the Falcons hat here, that's my team, has been since the late 80s, early 90s approximately. And I just want to go ahead and kind of give you my thoughts basically for whatever they're worth. Not a lot. You're probably going to disagree. You might agree. Who knows? But here I am on my YouTube channel, so I'm going to say what I want to say. So ultimately, let's go ahead and get down to the basics here. As far as my overall thoughts on the draft, just generally speaking here, not specifically getting to the Falcons necessarily yet. Really, really entertaining one, to be honest with you, if you're asking me. Well, who knows if you are or not? Who really cares? But at the same time, I really enjoyed myself personally. This year, of course, we really didn't necessarily have the marquee quarterbacks that sometimes are really kind of the main driving force of any NFL draft. We don't have some kind of generational talent that we're expecting. A Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, somebody who's going to kind of come in and is expected to kind of set the league on fire necessarily. But really, I think we had a great draft, to be honest with you, and we actually saw a lot of really, really good talent. Thing, of course, that kind of jumped out to me specifically, of course, is the amount of trades we had. That was great. I really enjoy watching the Cardinals go ahead and give up that third pick to Houston. Houston, of course, made two really good picks, to be honest with you. I think they're actually in a really, really good position to start building a nice, strong nucleus, frankly, to go ahead and start becoming a contender down the road. Now, I live in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm not from Florida. I've lived here for the last, 12 years or so now. But when it comes down to it, I really, really like this town. I like where I live. And it's nice that I live in an NFL town so that of course, I get to see, teams that come through, whatever else. But of course, Falcons fan, obviously. But seeing the AFC South and what it's basically become, and seeing Jacksonville starting to really kind of turn the corner, it seems, obviously by going ahead and drafting Lawrence last year, or 2 years ago now, we are in a position where you can start to see, development and growth, frankly, in the AFC South, and something that I'm really, really enjoying seeing, and it's something I'm looking forward to continuing to see, develop in the oncoming years. I think Houston is an interesting team. And one that I really, really like their direction in going ahead and signing DeMeco Ryans. I think he's going to be an interesting head coach and someone who's, unlike the last couple of guys who basically have jettisoned within a year. They didn't really feel like, they didn't really feel like head coaches, unfortunately. They didn't really feel like they really had any kind of support from the front office. Ownership kind of just threw them to the wolves, essentially, with horrible teams, and just kind of threw them away. I don't think that necessarily is going to happen here. I think they're going to give Ryans the ability to go ahead and really coach and develop and really grow within the position itself. And I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to see. CJ Stroud, I don't think is necessarily going to be, a franchise quarterback necessarily, someone who's, really going to be kind of that superstar necessarily. But at the end of the day, you never know. We don't really know anything when it comes to the draft, and that's what makes it so interesting. Ultimately, getting to another team here, because I'm talking a lot about the Texans for whatever reason. Another team I think that really kind of stood out to me, frankly, was Seattle. The Seahawks, I thought, had an absolutely fantastic draft. I really, really love the positions that they went ahead and addressed. I like what they did in the offseason. I thought that the emergence of Geno Smith, I think I can speak for a lot of people, a lot of fellow football fans, were really, really pleasantly surprised and kind of shocked, to be honest with you, to see his emergence and his growth, because ultimately what we saw originally when he was drafted years ago by the Jets, and seeing kind of the disaster that whole situation basically was, when he socked that guy and broke his jaw, was somebody who kind of had to humble himself and be a backup, obviously, for years, and really had the opportunity to come in and take the place of Russell Wilson, and came in and did an absolutely fantastic job. I don't necessarily know that I feel that they have necessarily a new Legion of Boom necessarily, but I really like this defensive backfield that they're going ahead and building. They absolutely nailed their draft, I think, this year, and did a fantastic job. So that's just one other team I have thoughts on. Now, getting, of course, to the team I really want to talk about, let's be honest with you. I think the Atlanta Falcons did an absolutely incredible job. And I'm, probably going to come off sounding like a homer because of that and whatever else. And that's fine. Everyone has their team. Everyone loves what they love. But the fact is that, ultimately, let's talk about, Bijan Robinson. Okay, first off, do we need another running back? Probably not. No. Do we need defensive help? Yes. Was that really the glaring issue that it's been the ongoing, glaring issue we've had for years? Yes. But the fact is that in free agency, because we finally have money, because we're not in cap hell for the last couple of years like we were because of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones's, bloated contracts, we're in a position, and I love saying we. I didn't do any of this stuff. I'm not a part of the franchise or the organization, but whatever. Okay, fine. We. But, we're in a position where, the Atlanta Falcons did an absolutely fantastic job in just going ahead and making this team interesting and exciting. And that's what Bijan Robinson's going to go ahead and bring. Now, yes, Tyler Algier is already in that backfield. And yes, he is absolutely fantastic. I'm not going to take anything away from that man. I had him in fantasy. I loved him. I think he's wonderful. I think there's a lot of talent. And the thing is that what I think Fortuno is going ahead and doing is really just going ahead and addressing, the talent deficiencies that the Atlanta Falcons have had for so long. With the first round the last couple of years, obviously going ahead and getting Kyle Pitts, getting Drake London, and now, of course, Robinson, you're going ahead and getting offensive playmakers, and you're getting guys that you can go ahead and really, truly call stars, and something that we really haven't necessarily had in a long time. And so they're wanting to build this nice young nucleus around, of course, Desmond Ridder. Now, I'm going to say this. A lot of people are down on Ridder. I'm not one of them. I don't think he's going to be the next great thing. I'm not saying the guy's going to be Peyton Manning. I'm not saying he's even going to be Matt Ryan. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that I just want to give the guy a chance. I want to give the guy an opportunity to go ahead and prove who he is. We saw 4 games last season, and it was middling. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was okay. It wasn't spectacular. But the fact is that what he basically did was at least he gave the front office something to believe in. And really, at this point, I, of course, because I'm a longtime Falcons fan, 30 plus years at this point, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. That's all I can ask. And that's all they can ask of me. Because at the end of the day, my opinion doesn't really matter. Let's be honest. I'm just another guy. When it came down to it, I think overall, what I really am loving about this draft, specifically outside of Bijan Robinson, is the fact they went ahead and addressed holes. They went with addressing the issues as they are on the current roster. They've identified the problems that we all can see. I mean, they're glaring issues with this team, and they have been for a long time. And Arthur Smith is a fantastic coach. I think he, frankly, coached his ass off last year. I think the 2022 season showed that he took a really talent-poor roster and went ahead and made something really interesting happen. And they ended up winning 7 games. At the beginning of the season, I thought they'd win like 3, maybe 4, legitimately. That really kind of told me that Arthur Smith is a great coach. I always respected him. I loved what he did up in Tennessee. I thought he did a fantastic job there running the offense. And of course, what he ended up doing with Derrick Henry was nothing short of spectacular. Derrick Henry, of course, is one of the best running backs I've seen in the last 25 years. There's just no other way of putting it. He's fantastic. And so ultimately, having that talent and having the knowledge that he brings to the game and being able to go ahead and run an offense, as effective as he basically has done and what he's shown he can do, obviously in Tennessee, and now, of course, now the head coach of the Falcons, we have to give this guy the opportunity to do what he does, and that's to coach. And at this point, I'm willing to do that. Matthew Bergeron. Now, he's listed as a guard. And, he was actually listed as a tackle. He's actually going to be playing guard for us, I think. He's going to swing into that left guard position, and I think he's going to be fantastic. Now, his one knock, of course, he has shorter arms for a tackle. Fine. That's why we're going to go ahead and draft him and kind of kick him into the guard position itself, which is our glaring hole on the line anyways. Fantastic pick. Goes ahead and addresses a huge glaring issue we basically had, and it will just kind of help to solidify things. Now, the Falcons already had one of the top running games in the NFL last year, of course, which goes back into why go ahead and get a running back when you already were doing so well. And the thing is that what having Robinson will go ahead and do, and the addition obviously of Bergeron will go ahead and address here as well, is the fact that it's going to go ahead and give us more flexibility in offense. It's going to give you the ability to go ahead and deploy a guy like Bijan outside, potentially, to go ahead and use his pass catching abilities that obviously are quite frankly impressive. They really are. But when it comes down to it, then you can go ahead and obviously use Algier as well, and you can go ahead and have that running back by committee situation, but with two legitimately really, really talented backs, and it's something I'm looking forward to seeing. If nothing else, I think it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be entertaining as all heck, and that's really all I can ask for as a sports fan. Going ahead and addressing itself, another glaring hole. The thing as a Falcons fan, you can say basically it's been a glaring issue for, 20 years. And that is, of course, pass rush. So going ahead and seeing Zach Harrison coming in from Ohio State, I don't necessarily think this guy is going to be, a J.J. Watt or somebody necessarily. No, I don't think he's going to be that. But is he going to be another really, really good, guy to go ahead and basically have in there to coach and continue to try to improve the pass rush? I think yes, that is ultimately what he's going to go ahead and bring to the table. Yeah, obviously there were guys that were available there, and of course everyone's going to say ever until of course it just is. Jalen Carter, yes, he was available, and yes, he's incredible. Obviously living in the Southeast, watching college football to a degree. Not the biggest fan, I'll be the first to say that. But ultimately someone who just feels that, again, I have to kind of respect what our GM in Fortino is doing, is, trying to make a really, really explosive team itself. And I think that they felt that they had addressed enough of the issues with the pass rush and with the overall defensive, liabilities that we have had for the last several years, with the free agent signings of guys like Calais Campbell and things of that nature, where they could go ahead and kind of turn their attention over to an offensive piece to go ahead. And I think ultimately, sell tickets. I think that's definitely a portion of why they went ahead and did what they did from a roster building standpoint this year. But I think ultimately what they went ahead and did as well is they addressed the issue specifically that just goes ahead and puts us in a better position to go ahead and really compete this year. I think really is really what it comes down to and what I'm trying to say. I can go into the other picks themselves. I don't think that's really necessarily what we're basically looking for here. Again, I'm just trying to kind of talk about my overall thoughts and opinions, frankly, and what my team did, and how I'm liking what they did. As far as another team that I think kind of missed the mark, to be honest with you, and someone who I'm not really necessarily all that keen with necessarily from a perspective of a fan. I think the New Orleans Saints did not do themselves much justice, to be honest with you, at all. I'm not really a big fan of what they did necessarily. I think that ultimately, and again, this is not somebody who is just against obviously a division rival or anything else, but I'm not really necessarily a big fan of who they really selected in the draft this year necessarily. I'm not really a big fan of anything they really did necessarily this offseason necessarily either. I think ultimately Carr is going to be somebody that's going to be Derek Carr. And you know what? Derek Carr is average. Derek Carr is not going to be the guy that's going to necessarily win you a lot of games necessarily. He's okay. I think at this point, you know, the book has been written on that guy. We know what we're getting. And ultimately, what they're basically doing in that franchise, I think, over the last couple of years since Sean Payton left, is really just kind of focusing specifically so heavily on that defense, I think, because ultimately I think their coach really feels more comfortable on that side of the ball. And I think ultimately by going ahead and getting a guy like Brian Breesy from Clemson, goes ahead and kind of, you know, underscores specifically that that's kind of the focus they're going to basically have at this point coming into the season. I'm not a big fan of their quarterback situation. I'm not really a big fan of their skill position there. I think a lot of their guys are kind of getting over it. Now, Chris Olave, fantastic receiver. I will take anything away from that man. I think that guy is fantastic. But ultimately, that's just kind of my opinion, frankly, on that. So, you know, of course, as I continue to do more and more of these videos, I'll be talking more and more about my thoughts on various teams potentially and my thoughts on what's going on. But those are my initial thoughts, at least on this day, basically in the final day of the 2023 draft. So with that being said, like and subscribe if you'd like. Have a great day. Thanks again. Take care.